And good morning. Today we have in the studio Ryan Zinke, one of the Republicans running for the House seat here in Montana, the open House seat. And good to have you here today.
Great to be here.
Well, I want to ask you a couple questions about foreign policy. Let's start with Ukraine. You probably have seen the situation where Russia's come in, annexed to Crimea, and then we have rising tensions between ethnic Russians and Ukrainians in the east. What should the U.S. response be in this situation?
Well, I think they'd sent us a softball pitch. What we should have done is approved the Trans-Canada Keystone Pipeline. We should have accelerated infrastructure to export liquid natural gas because Russia's a one-trick pony. It's energy. And we probably should have reduced the restrictions on sweet crude. I think Reagan had it right. If you're going to check Soviet dominance, and I would say Soviet because Putin is Soviet, you hit him square in the face with a free market. And I think we could. But our response, I thought, was weak. It's unfortunate. Putting sanctions against 11 Russians, it showed our weakness.
Do you think we're in a situation now where we may want to reconsider some of our nuclear weapons treaties with the Russians and some of our obligations there?
Well, certainly the nuclear weapons have a play in Montana with Great Falls. And I think we have to be very, very careful about dismantling our nuclear capability because it is a deterrent, and it's been a deterrent, successful deterrent for years. So I think you have to be very, very careful with that. Can you trust the Russians? Probably not. Can you influence the Russians by economic force? Yes. We're not going to put a carrier battle group in the Black Sea.
Well, you mentioned Malmstrom Air Force Base, and of course the nuclear force that we have up there. And there was some talk about in the last race, about the START Treaty and the effect of that and how we might lose some nuclear weapons there. And of course the president last year talked about creating a new BRAC commission and maybe reducing further military bases in the United States. Right. What do you think the effect, first of all, would you support a new BRAC commission round? And secondly, what do you think the effect would be on Malmstrom Air Force Base?
Well, Malmstrom is caught between really having, a legacy missile system and the C-130s. I think the challenge and the opportunity of Malmstrom really is to expand the mission and use our airspace for training. There's no place in the lower 48 that has more opportunity to train with our airspace than Malmstrom. We have the Hayes MOA, which is about the size of the peninsula of Florida. And that space is valued, and the United States military needs an airspace to train. And we may go to war, in cold weather as well. And so I look at expanding the mission in Malmstrom rather than contracting it. And if that base goes away, that's about $500 million in the economy, and that's a hard hit in Montana.
Well, let's move to a different subject. Twitter, right? It's a great means of communications, and I follow, of course, all the Republicans and the Democrats. And Matt Rosendale tweeted today, I think a couple days ago, saying that he's the most effective legislator in the race. How would you respond to that?
Well, you can say what you like. We're up in the polls, and we promised to run a positive Reagan campaign. That's the 11th Amendment. Thou shalt not talk ill of any other Republican, and we intend to do that in leadership by example. So I've seen the lies and the phony websites come up. Am I disappointed? Yeah, because if you're going to lie during a campaign, you're going to lie in Washington. And it becomes too easy to lie, and that's exactly what we're fighting in Washington. I mean, no one trusts the government for a good reason because you can't get truth out of Washington. So I think you look at Montana, and you got to make sure that you run a campaign that's truthful. You don't distort the truth. You don't invent websites that don't exist. And I think Montanans will respond to that.
Give me real quick one example of about 10 seconds left of leadership in the legislature.
I think leadership is leading by example. That means reading the bill. You don't vote on the bill title. You vote on the bill contents. And so I think you have an obligation to make sure that what you're doing, you look at the unintended consequences of the bill, and you thoroughly read it to understand the bill and not just the bill title.
Well, thanks for coming to the show today.
Hey, thanks. It's always great to be here.